Hello and welcome to the QT2 Systems My Journey to Kona podcast series. My name is Reem Jishi and I am the content director for QT2 Systems. With me today is our featured athlete is Dawn English and her coach John Spinney. Well, welcome Dawn, welcome John. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so Dawn, I'm going to start with questions for you, and John, feel free to chime in at any point if you want, and then after we talk to Dawn, we'll turn it over to Coach John. All right, so Dawn, let's just start. When did you first start participating in triathlon?
I was living in San Diego in 1999, and a friend of mine had just had a baby. She's like, "Okay, I need a goal after just having a baby. Will you do this triathlon with me?" And I thought, yeah. I mean, I love swim, biking, and running, always have. And so I did the Mission Bay Triathlon with her in October of 99. And I checked out a book from the library, it's that long ago, and followed a training plan for that. I think it was a 6-week training plan, and race day. We had read about wetsuits, but we thought we're not going to spend that money. That's ridiculous because we're just doing one. And we were in Mission Bay, which is connected to the Pacific Ocean, in October. That was a little chilly. So we're the only 2 people of about 2,000 that did not have a wetsuit. And so swam that. I couldn't feel, I was numb from head to toe. It was so cold. Hopped on my borrowed 10-speed bike with the shifters on the frame. And I made sure to put on shorts over my swimsuit before I headed out on that bike. And then did the bike and then hopped off and ran. And my legs had never felt heavier in my life. And I finished and I looked for the next one to sign up for. So it was a really fun day. Yeah.
So did you know what a triathlon was when you agreed to do it?
I did. I had always been interested in endurance sports, and living in San Diego at the time, it was probably one of the few places in 99 where triathlon was at the forefront. And so I knew what it was, but I didn't know. I mean, I discovered my big chain ring in my 3rd triathlon I ever did. I didn't know about any of that. I was riding and all of a sudden I hit, the left, and I was like, oh, it's harder to pedal. That's a big chain ring. So that's how you just jump right in when you're 27 and had a good time with it.
Sure. Oh, that's awesome. All right. So lived in San Diego, did a bunch of triathlons. At some point, did you start with sprint races? Was that mostly what you did?
So I did, yes, I did a few sprint races. I think I did one Olympic triathlon before we moved in 2000, and we left San Diego. And then I did mostly sprints and a couple of Olympics for a while. I didn't do a half Ironman until 2002. Okay. That was the first time I ventured into more long course racing.
All right. And then when did you compete your first Ironman?
I did my first Ironman in 2011. So really triathlon came along for me. We were living in San Diego. My husband was in the military. He's retired. And I had always been a very ambitious person, had a lot of physical energy, and always whatever I did, I wanted to do the best. And so I was in San Diego working. I was in grad school for full time, did this triathlon with my friend and started doing that. And then we moved to a more rural area of the country and I couldn't find a job. No one would hire me. I had my son there, all for, I knew what I signed up for, marrying someone in the military, but still that was a tough adjustment. And doing triathlon really filled a nice, it came along at a great time. It brought me a lot of joy because it was a way I could claim myself physically and had an outlet for that energy, but also it's a great thinking sport. So I enjoyed the analysis of it. And I liked how you can't just throw yourself into it. You have to pace yourself and you have to learn about all the equipment. So it came along at a nice time for me personally. And then after that, we moved to South Texas and I was still doing triathlons and had my son and my daughter. And IRONMAN Texas was announced for its inaugural year for 2011. And I at that time, people didn't do Ironmans as quickly as they do now. I think from a marketing perspective, it was seen more as like, oh yeah, that takes a long time to do that. So that was always in my mind. And I had done several halves at that point, half Ironmans. And when IRONMAN Texas was announced, some friends where I lived were talking about doing it. And I was really concerned about it taking time away with my family. And I think it's important to have your family on board with it. And so they were. So I signed up and did it in 2011.
Okay, awesome. So were you working with a coach at that point, or were you self-coaching?
I did. And I've been pretty fortunate. The coaches that I've had prior to QT2 were very endurance and aerobic based, which I was fortunate to have. So I did at that time have a coach. The race went well. It was in May in Texas. They've moved it now to April, but it was hot.
Yeah.
And that was when they did a mass start for the swim, and the bike went fine, but on the run, it went downhill quickly. And I thought, this is horrible. I'm never doing this again. It's ridiculous. So, but I finished, and I couldn't believe I finished. And funny story, when I finished, because it was so hot, my daughter, who was 7, it's very emotional. I couldn't believe I did it. She said, "Mom, why are you crying? It's so hot. Can we leave?" I know, honey. It's a long day.
It is. It's tough to be a spectator.
Out the mouths of babes, they speak the truth. So
yeah, they sure do.
Yeah.
So the first one, you said you're never going to do.
I was done. That was ridiculous. Yeah.
And how long did it take to change your mind?
2014. So 3 years later, I did IRONMAN Texas again.
Okay.
And also it's funny looking back, my husband at that time had deployed to Afghanistan. He was doing some work there, and it was a really stressful time. So I see a theme, and I signed up for that because I thought, well, I can do this. I can control this. This is a good outlet for a lot of the craziness that was going on in our lives at home. And I remember he came back from one of his rounds of working over there, and came back and met us for the race. And so it was a neat day.
Okay.
And it went a lot better. The second one went a lot better.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me about the second race, because that sounds like that was maybe the trigger to the bug for the future.
Yeah. So
okay.
The first one didn't go bad. I mean, I ended up 9th place. And I had some success in half Ironman. So I had thought like, well, maybe, but I don't want to be disrespectful and think Kona. And then in 2014, I ended up 8th, and it was, it just felt better. I was able to run the whole time. I didn't have that complete meltdown, probably because my fueling plan back then was Twizzlers and PopTarts. So, things have changed.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
I came up with that all by myself. So, the dietitians haven't asked me for my advice. I don't know why. So that was what I did back then. And the second one, I had refined that a bit, and and it went well and was much more enjoyable.
All right. So you kind of hinted at that point that Kona was maybe like on your mind.
Yeah. So I had done at that point in 2007, 2008, Ironman had branded the 70.3 event. And I had some success there in terms of being on the podium. And I qualified for World 70.3 in 2010, 2011, before I did IRONMAN Texas. So I thought, well, maybe, but also there were more slots then, but there's not a lot of slots. You can be really good and not qualify for Kona. So I tried to keep every race, every Ironman I did would be a race that I would do, even if Kona wasn't something that I wanted, because I didn't want to travel around, go a long way, and it's all about that Kona slot, and I don't get it. And I needed more than that to do the race.
Okay. So what else kept you motivated? What kept you motivated to do all the racing?
Yeah, looking back, enjoying the process, enjoying not only enjoying the training, remembering that person that crossed the finish line at that first Ironman and trying to stay in touch with her and what made that fun. I think a lot of times as you get better in the sport, you do need to analyze, you know, your technique, your physiology and all of that. And John knows too, sometimes I just do a run with no Garmin because sometimes getting so into that data for me can take some of the joy out of it. And I think that happens to a lot of people and they don't realize it's even happening, especially with mainstream of Strava and things like that, which are fun, but it can make you very external motivated. And it's all about the outcome and not about just go out and enjoy the run or the ride or your friends or what made you like it in the first place. And so I try to stay in touch with that and really follow something John has said many times. And it struck a chord with me and is true, is follow your motivation. If you really, really make sure that there's something deep in your soul that keeps you going.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So flash forward though now, 2022, you qualified. What, tell me about, congratulations, first of all.
Yeah. So I always thought, I thought, hey, I might qualify sometime. I'll get second and there'll be 2 spots, or I'll get, third or fourth, and then it'll be a roll down. But I ended up winning my age group in IRONMAN Texas, which I never thought I would do. This buildup has been the least linear training I've ever had. I'm 50 now. I've been going through menopause. That has changed things up a lot. So but in a way, it also put my ego aside, like just get over yourself and do your best. Definitely the day before this race, I told my husband, I said, for the first time, I don't feel any external pressure. I'm just excited to do this race and feel lifted by everyone out there. IRONMAN Texas, I now live in the Woodlands, which is where the race is. So that race is like a constant parade for you and just a group hug of people and support you. And it's fun too, because a lot of people are there. The whole community helps with the race that, they don't know me as triathlete Dawn. They know me from other stuff, related to my kids or other involvement. So that's fun too, because you get to see people from all parts of your life. So for the swim, it went well. I will say something funny. I have been having hot flashes a lot with menopause. And so the night before I had a ton of them. I was just sweating like all night long. And so the back half of the swim, I started getting cramps in my calf and feet, which I've never had. And the only thing I can attribute that to is probably the sweating all night. So that was different. So I spent the first part of the bike trying to recoup sodium, potassium fluid to alleviate that. The bike this year for IRONMAN Texas was extremely windy. It was a 25 mile an hour and then 40 mile an hour gusts, and you're on a highway essentially. So you're very exposed. And I knew going into that race with those conditions that if I could just stay within myself and pace it well, that I could have a decent back half of the marathon. I never think in terms of, I'm going to win the back half of the marathon. It's just, well, we'll see when I get there where I am. And then you go from there, because, that if you're going to race an Ironman, you don't think about doing it till the back half. But I do think that those tough bike conditions helped me stay more within myself, because I was just trying to survive. And, there was very chaotic with the wind gusts and trying to keep my intensity where it should be. So I didn't think about where I was at all. I was just trying to survive and stay somewhat within my my parameters that John and I had discussed. And then heading into the run, a couple miles in, I saw a friend and she told me that I was in second and I was 7 minutes down, which I was surprised by. I'm like, really? Okay. So and she said, the lady in front of you guys are running around the same pace. And so I just said, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. So I had on my watch my lap splits, and every aid station I fueled. And it wasn't a heroic, it's not like I came out and ran a 3:15 marathon. I stayed very, very consistent. And then I kept getting closer, and I thought, well, if she slows down a little bit and I can just stay consistent, I'll be able to be there. And so at mile 18, I might get emotional because it was so exciting. So two of my friends come running across, and at mile 18, they're like, you just went into first place. And I thought, oh, you know, I felt myself kind of tear up, and I thought, okay, don't cry, run. You still have 8 miles. There's a long way to go here. So yeah. And you know, my husband was out there and cheering and getting updates. And so those last 8 miles, I just tried to stay consistent. I fueled even though I didn't really want to. And, you know, a couple of times I saw some people I knew cheering and I couldn't remember their names. So I thought, well, I better have a gel because I don't remember their name and I know who they are. So, I did that. And then, you know, I knew when I finished that I had it, and it was so exciting. It was like every dream I had ever hoped in an Ironman, because Ironman can really break your heart. And I had done really well and not been at the top. So I was so excited. And I still, every day I think about it and it makes me so happy and fulfilled. And as one of my friends said, she goes, well, that's good. Better than feeling empty. So I'm like, yeah, it's very fulfilling to me to have fun and get to go to Kona.
Yeah. After, I mean, all those years, all the great races that you had, but all the near misses to finally,
so many near misses,
finally get it. But you know, what you say is that when you woke up and you had no expectations, I'm hearing that, you know, from people that they're like, it's when they, like, you take the pressure off yourself and you just follow the process, that's when good things, you know, good things happen. So.
Well, and I think there's an antithesis to that with our culture now is so put it on social media, tell everybody you want to do it, or, you know, this is my goal and no one's going to get in my way. But when you focus too much on that, it creates this expectations and pressure that can be very self-sabotaging. And so I ask myself, and, you know, if social media didn't exist, would you still do this? And just in terms of that external focus, you've got to find something more inside about it. And enjoy the process. If you don't enjoy swimming, biking, and running, and it's just about getting to Kona and checking the box, it's going to be more difficult race day and to stay in it. I mean, I've been doing the sport a long time, and you know, you want to be in there for the long haul if you can.
Yeah. All right. So I think you've answered this, but you realized you got your Kona ticket while you were racing. So you didn't have to go through that whole anticipation of, you know, this.
Which again, I never expected. I was always that one that I'm hanging out till the roll down and maybe the last one and maybe I'll get it. So just to outright have it was something that I never expected. I mean, I've had near misses. I was third one time, and first and second went to Kona, and I was third place by 4 minutes, and I had a 20-minute bike mechanical and I missed it. So I have been within 5 minutes, 15 minutes, many times. So I was used to that.
Yeah. And this time they called your age group and you walked up, you know, there was no question. So exciting. All right. So how do you think you went from all of those near misses to qualifying? What made the difference?
I guess being old and still doing it. No, probably what made the difference this time. Well, some of it is true, right? Being 50, and I am slower than I used to be, but I'm not not a lot slower than I used to be. I think John helped me with my training to see, to have more of a change mindset and not fixed in terms of what I did for training, because physically I can't do what I used to do 10 years ago, but how to adjust that and still be able to get the most out of what you can do. And I think that helped a lot, along with, as you said, having that mindset. And I don't know if it's because I'm 50 and I'm finally mature, or along the way, just not putting pressure on myself, just seeing the whole thing as a celebration. I really go into every Ironman that if we are healthy enough to do this, right, do these events, If we are able to make the time to train, if we have the resources to do an Ironman, everything else is icing, especially after the last few years. I mean, if you are just there, it's all good. And so the result is just a little cherry on top.
Yeah. All right. So Kona, a couple months away now, getting there for you, right?
Still training. I've never training through the summer in Houston is a lot of fun, let me tell you.
Well,
But I'll definitely
perfect.
be heat adapted. I'll be heat
You will,
adapted. For
you will
sure.
be heat adapted. You don't need to go in and add 5 layers and, you know, get your
No, I
heat.
do not.
You got
No,
it.
I do not.
So,
Yeah.
what are you most excited about racing at Kona?
To be on that hallowed ground of that course that started the whole thing. I'm very excited about that. I'm also excited to get away with my husband, and because, you know, bless these spouses to do this with you. I mean, it's a lot on them too. So I'm excited to get away, excited to do the race and be there and enjoy it with my other friends that are racing this year as well.
Cool. Anything make you nervous?
Logistics. I have mostly done longer races that are logistically closer to my home. I have not done a lot of ship my bike and race a long way. So just want all that to go well and be smart in the wins.
Okay. All right. So last question for you. What piece of advice would you give someone who's trying to qualify for Kona?
I would say 3 main things. Take that goal of Kona and then put it in the next room. Don't keep it in the room with you, and focus on your process. Have excellence in your process, not perfection, but excellence. So it needs to be about the training, the swim, bike, run, the volume, the intensity that's right for you. Focus on your recovery, your strength, your supportive group, and embrace the change as you go. So focus on the process. Don't focus on Kona. Focus on the process. Have multiple goals in an Ironman that will fulfill you. Make sure that something other than a Kona qualifying slot is going to allow you to feel successful in a race. You can travel a long, long way for those extra Kona slots that race is given out and not qualify. And does that mean you're a failure? No. I mean, my best Ironman in terms of Garmin data, I was 9th place. Top 13 women in my age group went under 11 hours. They were giving out more slots at IRONMAN Texas. And, you know, those women in the top, they were the ones that were at the top in Kona that year. So was I a failure because I got 9th? No. So making sure you have other things that are going to satisfy you. I have done one Ironman where, looking back, my main goal was, oh, more Kona slots, I'm going to go do it. And it was just not a great experience. And so make sure you've got some other things that are going to fulfill you. And also don't add extra pressure to your goal. Like we said before, if social media didn't exist, would you still want to do this? And think long and hard about that one, that it needs to be a goal that if no one knew about it, you would still want to do it.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right. Thank you, Don. Coach John, on you. So how would you describe Don as an athlete?
So I was thinking a little bit deeper about this. So Dawn first came to, I first worked with Dawn. She came to a triathlon camp that I used to run here in Stowe, Vermont. And I think she's a really intuitive athlete. And I think she realized that the style of coaching that I do, which is very heavily focused on muscular endurance, aerobic development, a lot of very, very bike oriented. Of course, we're getting swim and run as well, but at Ironman, developing that bike durability is something that can take someone to the whole next level. And I kind of think she saw that, and that's in my style of coaching, and wanted to connect as a coach and see where that would go. And so, and she's also, like I said, she's somebody that once she decides she wants to do something, she's very motivated towards that. And I just kind of support her along the way with what she's motivated towards. And so if it's, you know, it was an Ironman focus. So, you know, I just go right into the mode that I know has been successful with with a lot of athletes, but meeting Dawn where she's at. And, you know, there's a famous Ironman coach, Gordo Byrne, that has a quote, "You have to get tired the right way." And a lot of athletes don't get tired the right way, meaning their training stress is not appropriate for them for the distance. So once you figure out that specific athlete's ideal training stress, it can be just a nice trajectory towards success, really. And I'm very heavy on muscular endurance across all three sports, but especially on the bike. Lots of low cadence work. Dawn's probably done a ton of low cadence work in the last couple seasons. And that just goes so far in terms of basically making the Ironman bike take less out of you so that you're a little fresher for the run. And I think that was a big part of Dawn's success. And also we train in a way that's really, you know, a lot of the steady state work that we do, and then doing the transition runs off the bike, off of almost every single bike. It just, Ironman day just becomes more like a big training day, and it takes the pressure off.
Okay.
And
So
Can I interject one thing? One thing that John does too that was very attractive to me is he uses Whoop data, which measures your HRV, sleep quality. And as I've gotten older, things are not as linear. I used to be able to lay out a training plan, and I knew in 8 weeks, this is what I was going to do, and I was going to feel great and be able to do it. Well, now things are a lot more nuanced for me. And so way back, John was one of the early adopters for coaching with using that. I have it on all the time. And so that has been very helpful, because then he makes adjustments based on what he sees, how my recovery is going, how I'm feeling, fueling. And so it becomes a lot more nuanced. And that's the difference between a coach and a plan. And John has, you know, he was one of the first people I heard talking about all this kind of stuff. And as things for me started to, like I said, not go as it's always gone, I've appreciated his help in that area.
Yeah, that's cool. I think the two major areas of the style of coaching that I do, especially for Ironman, is a big focus, like I said, on muscular endurance and aerobic development, but then also very close management of recovery, sleep, HRV. And it's for a coach, it's unbelievable, because I've been coaching 12 years, and the first half of the coaching career, we didn't have access to that. I think only Olympic teams had access to really accessible HRV data that wasn't overly expensive. And now to be able to just see how she's recovering, that's something that I become known for too as a coach. So I get a lot of athletes that have recovered from overtraining, and they, you know, just getting them back on track. And so HRV is just an incredible tool. So if HRV isn't bouncing back by, you know, Tuesday or Wednesday of a training week, we typically would want to look at that and adjust, especially if it's a key week. And so we're really coming into some key training weeks for Dawn, and so HRV becomes even more helpful.
And fun fact, I discovered that I have a really low HRV, low just in general, which explains why in the past, you know, a lot of the higher volume, higher stuff, it would just beat the heck out of me. Well, with a lower HRV, you need more recovery. And so I think John, you know, it took a bit, but we got my schedule so I can keep going, because I used to kind of go along and then I would just completely bottom out. And it's been great because it allows me to rely more on how I feel, but now I know why too, because my HRV is just a lot lower than a typical person. And so, you know, those nuances make a big difference in your training.
It's really good information to know about yourself individually as an athlete, what your HRV is, because like Dawn said, it basically HRV is a resilience meter, right? And so you have athletes that are on the lower end, you have athletes that are on the higher end, and keep in mind, you can have a very fast athlete. I had an athlete once, he ran a 2:45 marathon age grouper. He was one of the fastest age groupers at IRONMAN Texas. 2:45 off the bike, he had low HRV. It just meant he needed more recovery. Like he didn't bounce back as fast from workouts. And conversely, I've had an athlete with like skyrocketed, like the highest HRV I've ever seen. he could handle a lot of training, but he wasn't necessarily super fast or anything like that. So it's just, for a coach, it's like gold to know this, to know, oh, this athlete needs a little more recovery, particularly with certain kinds of, higher intensity or race, recovering off of a race. Sometimes we just go right back into training a little too soon off of a half Ironman. It seems simple, but sometimes that residual fatigue just can linger, and then it'll affect the athlete absorbing new fitness from new training stress.
Okay.
So yeah, HRV is a really helpful tool.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how long have you been working together? Coach client.
Well, fun fact, we started last spring,
Okay.
but I was not feeling motivated, felt terrible. Turned out I had a carbon monoxide leak in my house I didn't know about. It was bad, but I didn't know. That's why I didn't feel good. I mean, at one point I called John, like, I don't know what it is. I'm not motivated. He's like, follow your motivation. Well, anyway, we found out, remember that big freeze that happened in Texas?
Yeah.
That happened to our house. Anyway, all good now. So then I reached out to him last fall and I said, hey, guess what? I feel great now. So let's go.
Okay.
So yeah, so last fall we started working together consistently.
Okay. All right. So her first Ironman working with you, then she qualifies, right? So what was the difference in your mind? What took her from the near misses to getting the spot this year?
Well, I really think just additional, so Dawn lives in a relatively flat area, right, with Texas. So the muscular endurance work, like when someone who lives in a hilly area, they're naturally getting a lot of muscular endurance work anytime they go uphill. So in Dawn's case, I think that was a big key, is doing extra focus on muscular endurance in a really triathlon specific way. So doing like low cadence repeats, aero, and I probably bumped up her bike volume a bit, and and just making her run off the bike all the time, even if it's a 20-minute run. A 15-minute run is worth it for a triathlete. Even, let's say you don't have any time to do that run, but if you just can shorten the bike 10 minutes and get in a 10 to 15-minute T run, it goes a long way, even though it's not a lot of run volume, but it's allowing your body to adapt to the change of the transition from bike to run. I think just a lot of good steady state work, and then a really well-timed, in Dawn's case, a well-timed like anaerobic little block where we do a little VO2 work, because she's very aerobic, and very aerobic people can kind of get into this whole thing of like they have one speed. And so to break them out, you really have to apply some VO2 work and kind of raise that VO2 ceiling at the right time. Timing is really key, because you also really want a lot of that specific aerobic threshold work. So that's the QT2 top of Z1 steady state work, which is really, really what you need a lot of for Ironman. And because she's so aerobic, she has to work pretty hard to get to hold the top of Z1. So we had workouts where, I want you to try to goal average heart rate is top of Z1 for this low cadence effort. And that kind of thing, it just starts to apply the race specific stress that she needs.
All right, great. Okay, so I asked this of Don. I'm going to ask this of you now. What piece of advice would you give to someone who has the goal of qualifying for Kona?
Well, probably the biggest thing, and this is something Don already gets, is it's a lifestyle. Like I've had athletes before where they just want to go to Kona and but they don't really get into the lifestyle of it. I just mean in terms of your day-to-day, like your daily performance environment, if you will, is what some coaches might refer to it. And just that daily applying the right kind of training stress consistently is really key. And just realizing that it's a lifestyle. You can't just kind of oh, I'm going to just decide to go to Kona this one year. And meanwhile, didn't really do anything in the years prior to that. So it's really a buildup. It's a lifestyle. And, it's getting those long rides in. It's getting a lot of aerobic threshold, steady state work consistently and staying strong. Triathlon is a strength endurance sport.
Mhm.
And Ironman is the height of that at the longest distance in the sport we do for the most part, other than Ultraman, I guess. But it's truly a strength endurance sport. And so we need the paddle work in the pool. We need the low cadence work. We need the hill repeats. We need uphill running when we can, to build strength. And all of that strength just kind of improves that overall Ironman durability and the ability to just keep moving forward and not really slow down that much, especially on the run. And there is a quote that I like to say with my athletes, it's all about the bike so that it can be all about the run.
Mhm.
And if you don't have good bike durability, you can't even really access your run.
Sure. All right, great advice. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today. This is really interesting just to hear the stories and what got you where you are today. And congratulations again to the two of you. We'll be watching you in October.
Thanks, Reem.
All right, thanks very much.
Thanks, Reem.
All
Thanks,
right.
Bye-bye.
guys.
All right,
See y'all.
bye.
Bye, John.